Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. We're just going to begin with a parak of Tehillim. If I can ask everyone to rise. Shir Amalos Mimamakim Kirasicha Adonai Adonai Shima Bikoli Tiyena Aznecha Kashiros L'Kol Tachanunoi Im Avonos Tishmor Ya Adonai Miyamo Kimcha haslicha leman tivarei Kivisi Adonai kivsa nafshi velivara hochalti Nafshi l'Adonai mishomrim laboker shomrim laboker Yachel Yisrael l'Adonai Kim Adonai yachesed v'arbeim ofidos Who yiftes Israel mikol avonosam. Please be seated. I want to welcome to our shul and to our community Mrs. Toby Levy. We are honored to have you with us this evening. Mrs. Levy was born in Poland in 1933, and following the 1941 German invasion of Soviet-occupied Poland, she and her family were forced into a ghetto, and then a harrowing experience that I'm sure we'll hear a significant amount about this evening, where ultimately they would hide until June 1944 when they were liberated. In 1921, there were an estimated 1,230 Jews living in the town in which Mrs. Levy was born, and by the end of the Shoah, she and her family were among just 31 from her town to have survived. Mrs. Levy is a highly sought-after speaker and a dedicated volunteer at the Museum of Jewish Heritage in New York City. She frequently speaks to school groups, and just this week, she described her experiences in front of over 3,000 people, I'm told, on Sunday. And so it's a great honor for us to have her here. I would like to thank, for the sponsorship tonight, Chaplain Bruce and Judy Bublik for sponsoring this event, and I'd like to acknowledge the work of Avrami Grohl in organizing this program, and thank Avrami Weisberger and Naomi Bodek and Rochelle Storfer for all of their assistance with the AV and all of the publicity. Just to share a thought to frame our evening that we're going to have together with our incredible role model and speaker. I've shared with you in the past, a few years ago, I had the opportunity to take a trip to Berlin. And this trip was with a number of different college students, and we went to many different sites in Germany and throughout Berlin related to the Shoah. One of the most powerful experiences was a museum that we went to that was right alongside the official Berlin Memorial to the Holocaust. The official Berlin Memorial to the Holocaust is in the middle of the city. It is a series of over 2,700 slabs of concrete of different sizes. That in and of itself is a very powerful experience to walk through, but next door, right next to that memorial, there is a museum. And we walk through the museum, and there are many very powerful images and powerful pictures and different connections that you make to the Shoah through that experience. And I will never forget the experience in that museum that had the greatest impact on me. I kept a diary of the trip, and I wrote down my thoughts and my feelings and my reactions each and every night, and then edited it a little bit on the plane home, and so I have it. The way this museum worked is you walked through various exhibits, and then you came to a massive concrete bunker-like structure. And you walk from we were there in the spring, I think. And you walk from the air-conditioned museum into this bunker-like structure. It's like a concrete structure, giant structure, very overwhelming. and there is no artificial light in the building. There are windows at the top, and the only light that's coming into the room is coming in from the outside. And you walk alongside thousands and thousands of these metallic leaves that are in the shapes of human faces. And you can, in this room, you can hear the traffic and the city sounds of the city of Berlin. You can feel whatever the weather experience is outside, because there is no artificial climate control in the room. So you're standing in this room, and on one hand, you're in this museum that is preserving this memory of the past, this tragedy of the past. And on the other hand, your sensory experience is entirely aligned with the outside world, which continues to drive and to honk and to talk and to play and to laugh. And you can hear everything going on outside while you're having this very, very powerful confrontation with the terror of the past. And it was a very powerful experience because for me it captured not only such a critical and foundational lesson of the Shoah in general, of how much of the world was silent, how much of humanity did nothing, while the worst of the evils of humanity perpetrated a crime against the world of such epic proportions. And yet life went on for so many people, not only in Europe, but in the United States of America, and even in the government of the United States of America. And that silence is deafening throughout history. But it also struck me in terms of our mandate in our lifetime. Because there is a lot of noise in our world. There are a lot of things we do, there are a lot of obligations we have, there are a lot of connections we make. We make our way through the building of the Jewish people, and thank God we are celebrating this year the 70th anniversary of the founding of the State of Israel. The Jewish people are strong and they're vibrant and they're growing in so many ways, also suffering from tremendous assimilation. But we have very busy and noisy lives outside of this reality. And that's why it's so frightening to consider the possibility that in the course of all of that noise, we can sometimes allow ourselves to forget, God forbid, or disconnect from one of the most defining, horrific, and impactful points of Jewish history from the beginning of time until where we find ourselves standing today. And so it's incumbent upon us to remember, to internalize, to connect to, and to appreciate the magnitude on a global level and the significance on a very, very personal level of what the Shoah experience, what the Shoah reality was and is for the Jewish people. The Torah tells us, Zechor Yemos Olam, that you have to remember the days of the world, Binu Shenos Dor Vador. And many people interpret those verses as parallelisms. You should remember, and Binu Shenos Dor Vador, you should understand the generation to generation. It's poetic. I always thought that the pshat was, Zechor Yemos Olam. If you want to really remember the defining moments of Jewish history, and all of the people we lost, and everything we suffered, then Binu Shenos Dor Vador, you have to create a conversation between generations. And that conversation between generations begins by us standing and listening and remembering the testimony of those who were there. And that is an increasingly urgent role of our generation, to make sure that as many of us as possible have the opportunity to be able to hear Binu Shenos Dor Vador Sha'al Avicha V'Yagedcha, that we can ask the previous generation, and they can tell us, Zikeinecha V'Yomru Lach, the elderly can share with us their experiences. We are fortunate that our memories will be shaped by those direct experiences because the impact it will make on us and on the story we share with the next generation is so profound and so deep. And that's why it's such an honor for us to be able to host Mrs. Levy this evening, and we invite her to share her story with all of us.
Can you hear me? Can everybody hear me? Yes. Okay. The Rabbi said a lot of things, and all of it is true. I am the product, but I'm proud of it. Don't worry about it. I'm going forward. Oh, okay. I give you a little bit of an idea of, since you know the year I was born, and I have to say the same year Hitler came to power, 1933. On one hand, it was a happy occasion. On the other hand, I didn't know what's waiting for me and everyone else. I lived in a very small town, Chodrów, Poland. At the time it was Poland, now it's Ukraine. We had a small family, but my grandparents, aunts and uncles. Life was not bad at that time when I was born. My father was a soldier in the First World War. He was a German soldier. He was wearing a German uniform. That means he knew what Germany is all about. He was a merchant. We lived in the center of town. We lived in the same building as my grandparents, my paternal grandparents, same building. We lived in the center of town, which was, it's called the Rinnig Square, because the villagers come twice a week to exchange their products. They sell and they buy. My father had a store. We had a nanny for me for the day that my mom helped in the store. So life was okay. Shabbos was Shabbos. We had a beautiful synagogue in Chodrów, made out of wood. They have a replica of it in the Tel Aviv Museum, in the Museum of the Kvutzot. Beit Kvutzot, thank you. Beautiful. When I'm there, I go to see it. Not too far from us. My father was always observant. He never changed his thinking. Whatever he was right was right. Both my parents were strong people. Very good people. He was respected in town, loved by everybody, and respected by the Jews and non-Jews. Very smart people. 1939, life was okay. 1939, Germany goes to war, makes a pact with Russia, and divides Europe. I am occupied by the Russians from 1939 on. But on the other hand, my husband, who was in Poland closer to Germany, he was occupied by the Germans from 1939. He was 13 years old. Within the months, he and his brothers and father were picked up, taken to labor camps at 13. So he was from 1939 to 1945, 6 years in labor camps. But he made it. I, on the other hand, was okay for 2 years. My father realized if the Russians come in and he has merchandise in a store full of merchandise, they will call him bourgeois and take him to Siberia. So what he did is take his merchandise, put him in sacks, 3 full sacks I remember, as tall as I am, stuffed it and hid it. These materials saved our life, I must say. And when the Russians came in, they saw he's a poor guy, so they gave him a work, and life was still okay. From 1939 to 1941, we were with the Russians, it was still okay. 1941, Germany attacked Russia and pushed them back. It was so fast, everybody tried to run. Somehow, the communication is not like today. Somehow we knew that when they occupied Poland and what they did to the Jews, but we couldn't know exactly. And nobody would believe. Let's put it this way, they didn't add the dots, what's happening in Poland, what's happening in Germany. Communication wasn't like it is today. And I blame the Jewish leaders, always did. They should have understood what's happening and warned the people that were able to run. Had we known prior what's happening there, maybe we could have ran to Russia. But nobody accepted it. Nobody understood the depth of it. Just didn't understand. They thought it's going to be a pogrom or whatever. I don't understand the stupidity of all the Jews. We didn't run. When we started running, it was too late, because the Germans ran so fast, the trains were full, you couldn't get on it, so my father took a horse and buggy, packed the four of us, and we're running on a horse and buggy. Can't run fast enough, because the Germans were running faster. So my father says, you know what, we're much better off going back to our hometown. At least we know the hometown, we know our neighbors, and that's what we did. So we're coming back, because no way could we get into deep of Russia. We're coming back home. The Germans walked in 1941. I think it was May or June, middle of the year. Right away they asked, just like you sitting here, they asked everybody out, all the Jews out, into the Linux. And what I remember, because I was so short, all of us came out. My father holding me in my hand and my sister, I had an older sister. What I remember is the boots and the uniforms, and they looked so elegant, but their voices screaming, yelling, dehumanizing, talking to people, and I'm pulling on my father asking, what are they screaming about? My father said, quiet, no talking. From then on, we all children kept quiet. We realized that the parents can't help us, they can't tell us, they can't do anything for us. All we can do is hold on hands. The orders were, from now on, you're no longer citizens. Jews lived in Chodrov for hundreds of years. No longer citizens. You have to wear an armband. Ours was white, but 5 inches white. In the center, a blue star. Everybody's to wear it. Can't go in the street without it. Whatever you have belongs to us. You have no more rights. Everybody goes to work, curfew, and then they take one man. They did it in every town they occupied. They had a system. They knew exactly what they're doing. They fooled everybody first, calming them and then doing what they wanted to do. Well, they took one, wasn't my grandfather, a man with a small little beard, not a big one, cut his beard. This itself is a shock to the system. Push him on the floor, he's on his hands and feet. The German puts a foot on his back and says to us, this is who you are now. That's it, finished, you have no life. And giving orders. We come upstairs to the house. My father says to my mom, none of us are going to make it. We are all dead. Unless, he says, it's a miracle, or we're so vigilant, or we're so alert, and we look around, but without help from our neighbors, no one will make it. And he was right. So he was always alert, my father, always snooping around. What he was trying to do is knowing in advance what they're thinking, what their issues are, what they want from you. He got a job working in the lumber yard, which was good, because not only Jews worked there, but non-Jews too. So, sure enough, one guy comes over and tells, they pick, I'm not going into details between, because it's too many details. I'll give you enough of details. So one guy comes over, which knew my father. My father's name was Moshe. He says to my father, Moshe, listen, it's going to be a big aktia. I don't know when, but it's going to be one. Look for a good hiding place. There was the help from outside. My father had it. He had enough time to prepare a hiding place. My father was a genius in my life. I know he was. Every house in Europe has a big cellar, one flight down, because they didn't have refrigerators in those years. So it was for everything. That cellar served a purpose for everything. So he figured out he can make a new wall in the cellar, but you can't go in hiding place from the street because people will see you. It'll have to be from inside. He figured out exactly where his sister's apartment is, and he knocked out a hole underneath the stove. He figured it out, okay? And when the time came, he made a platform, so when we roll into this cellar, we shouldn't go all the way in the bottom, but we should be on a platform. He put bedding, we shouldn't get hurt. So 4 of us and his sister, which were 3 small children, 2 boys and a little baby infant, and my aunt and uncle. His father did not want to go. Sure enough, again, someone says to my father, Moshe, it's going to be this weekend. Moshe had a hiding place. He comes on Friday night. Usually they would do picking up or killing would be a Shabbos or a holiday. This was Shabbos. So Friday night we come home, we eat dinner, we go into hiding place, all of us, my aunt and uncle. My paternal grandfather says, no, I'm not going. I'd rather die now than later and seeing you dead before me. He stays in the kitchen and we go into hiding place. Sure enough, Shabbos morning, we hear noise, boots, knocking the doors and picking up the remainder of my father's family. Very late in the afternoon, they're coming into the kitchen where my aunt is, and they tell my grandfather, come. He says no. They shot him in the apartment. Shooting a person was like they didn't see you as a human being. They looked at you like you were a roach. They had no connection that this person's a human being. So shooting was very easy. Very, very late in Shabbos afternoon, very late, the cellar door opens up. I was not the youngest, but I guess maybe I wasn't sitting too close to my mom. All I said was so quietly, very quietly, just a bit, My whole body was shaking, was full of fear. My mom grabs my hand, but they heard a noise. So the German and a Ukraine police walking down the steps down the cellar. My aunt puts a pillow on the infant, not to scream. None of us are breathing. As they're coming down, a cat jumps out and says a big meow, and the Germans start laughing. Oh, it's only a Katze. And they walked out. We waited a day or 2. We were afraid to go out. We didn't know if it's finished or not. The remaining family, whoever was survived, my mom's sister survived. She came looking for us, but we were afraid to go out in case they caught her and she would say where we are. It's very complicated to understand the mentality, how a person wants to survive. Life is there. Everybody wants to live. We're coming out 2 days later, and my father's family was all gone, but my mom's family is still alive, half of it. The next thing they're saying, they're going to relocate. They used language of deception. And the reason people accepted the deception was because there was no place to go. No one was there to help. There was no communication. What could you do if they're telling me they're going to relocate me? We have to go. But my father comes home, he tells it to my mom, but he says, I don't believe them. I'm not going. We're not going. I don't believe them. They're going to take us to Lvov. Lvov had a very big ghetto. Lvov had 30,000 Jews. Chodorov had no more than 5. But the surroundings, little villages, had farmers. But they were slaughtered right away by the Ukrainians, not just the Germans. My father says, we're not going. What are we going to do? She says, I don't know, but I'm going to look. Sure enough, he looks and looks, comes back. He says, I found a woman who wants to hide us. Her name was Stephanie Struck. She was a customer of his. He approached her. She said, yes. So she said, how many of you are going to come into hiding? So we were 4. My mom's sister and 2 younger children, 2 younger cousins I had, 4 and 6. 4 and 6, and I was 8 and a half. My sister was 12 and a half. So we're 4 children. And my mom's mother was still alive. She said she'll go. So we're 9 people. So now we have to find a hiding place. She lived in the center of town. However, every house in Europe has a yard, a big yard. So the yard had a garden. After the garden was a barn. Barn is made out of panels. So my father said, okay, we'll go to the barn. I'll make the barn a little smaller. Like he made 4 feet by 4 feet, just to sleep, that's all. 4 feet the width and 4 feet the length. If a person wanted at night to turn over, all 9 of us had to turn. Then he gives her money to buy a livestock in order, an excuse to be able to go to the barn to give us food. Otherwise, she carries food. The neighbors will ask, what is she carrying so much food? And how can she buy food for us? So she bought us a pig and chickens, put them in the barn, and we slowly went every night, another person she took in, and we were sitting there, but the men were still working, except the women and children. The men were afraid to go join us together in case they shouldn't be looking why didn't they come to work. So the very last minute, my uncle and my father, when they started putting the people on the trains, my father and uncle came running to the hiding place. One of my uncles didn't make it, that he was supposed to come, he was single. 2 weeks later, she comes and tells us there isn't a single Jew left in Chodorov. Yunrain. That's what they wanted, Yunrain. Sit still. Of course we're sitting still. There was nothing much we could do in the barn. We would sit in this little corner, and during the day, each person would go out and stretch their legs, and that's it. And whatever food she was able to bring us, which is potatoes or bread. That's all she could feed us, which was okay. You can live on bread and potatoes. Maybe 3 months into the hiding, 3 people are standing in the center barn in pajamas, and the rest of us are looking, watching. The big barn door opens up, and Stephanie's standing in the middle with a Ukraine police right next to her here. Whenever I talk about it, I see that picture. She's here and he's here. And the barn is pitch dark. Inside is very sunny. So when the door opens up, the pig and the chickens are running towards the door. She knew she has Jews. He didn't see us. He was concentrating on the pigs and chicken. He didn't see us. Had he seen us, he would have picked us up. She gets frightened. She sees 3 of us standing. She closes the door after a while, comes back an hour or 2 later, and says to us, you have to leave. I cannot keep you. I'm sorry. You can't stay. My kids don't know about you. Go. We have no place to go. She says, I don't care. You have to go. I'm giving you 2 days. Go. I'm leaving the barn door open. My mom and my aunt tried to get out and knock on their neighbors that they knew all their lives. No one wanted even to open the door. One man did say to my mom, I make believe I didn't see you. Why? Because the order was, if you see a Jew, you have to report. So if he told her he makes believe, that means he's not going to report. So she comes home and says, okay, we have no place to go. Nobody wants us. What do? So there is a forest. So my father's thinking, we'll try to get to the forest. But to get to the forest, you have to go to the end of town. There's a lake. After the lake is the forest. It's a big walk. We go at night. We have children, we have my grandma, we have to make it. But he tells Stephanie, I know he didn't see us. Why don't you go talk to him? She says, I don't care, you have to leave. The night that we have to leave, my father, we're getting dressed to go. My father decides that maybe me and my sister was 4.5 years older, she's bigger, she's mature, she understands what it's all about. he says to Betty, my sister's name was Betty, he says, Betty, you take Toby's hand and you take care of her. From now on, you be with her. Here is 2, 3 addresses. He gives her addresses to Polish people, neighbors that he knew all his life. Maybe they will take you in, maybe. Mom and I, the rest of us, are going to try to run to the forest. Remember, he says to her, the war will end, but I don't know when. If we don't come back, here is addresses. We have family in Palestine. My mom had a sister. They ran away in 1937. They had 1 visa. My father had a single brother. My mom had a single sister. They had 1 visa. It showed you if we had visas, we would have been able to run. They had 1 visa. They got married and went to Palestine. So I had an aunt and uncle in Palestine, and he had cousins in the United States. So he says to my sister Betty, here are the addresses. If we don't make it, you to go out to look for Jews to take you out of here. But I'm sure they're going to look for survivors. Jews will come looking for you. You're not to stay here if we don't make it. My aunt and uncle, the kids were too young. They had to take him. As we're saying goodbye, Stephanie, I don't know, it's a miracle, we had to survive. Or she changed her mind and she goes to Ukraine police and says to them, why did you come, what did you want? You know who I am, I have no husband, he says, Mrs. Strzok, I came to check your livestock. That's all I did. She realized he did not see. So she comes home and she knows we're leaving tonight, but she can't chase us. She says to her 2 children, she has a daughter of 19 and a son of 16. 16, that's all. She tells the children who she has in the barn, and the 16-year-old, his name is Tajik, says to Mom, you can't chase them, they'll never make it. I will help you, maybe together we will make it. And he tells to the sister, you stay out of it, me and Mom are going to do it. Because she was 19, she was socializing with the Germans, he was afraid she might spill it. He says, it's not your business, you stay out of it. Me and Mom are going to do it. Tajik, and she, I guess, agrees. He says no, she says no, but it was going on the conversation, she was telling us later. Tajik opens up the door. This little one, not too big guy, a small little kid, not a husky guy, 16 years old, opens up his name. My name is Tajik. You're not going anyplace? I will make a better high. I'll go higher to the attic. You're going to stay here, and we'll try. What can I tell you? We couldn't believe our ears, and he did make the place higher, high, 2 floors higher, all the way to the attic. So when she delivered food, we would have to have a platform to jump, pick it up, because it was all at the bottom. That's where we stayed for 2 years, maybe shy of 2 weeks. We had mice, we had rats, lice, all these things you forget, but the hunger was very, very, hunger till I think it hurts the mental status when you're hungry. You can't concentrate, you can't do. I never forgot my hunger. I'm not hungry anymore, but I never forgot it. It was difficult, but at least we were able to stand, we were able to sit. My father was able to talk to each other. We weren't cramped into the darkness, because a barn is made out of panels, so you could have a little bit light inside. My father never changed his religion, his mind about religion. He stayed true to it. He had a calendar, he knew when the Jewish holidays are, when Passover is. He was making sure that, teaching us a little bit what we are and who we are, and made sure that he's teaching me the Yiddish, the alphabet, because I did not go to school yet, so I didn't know it. They tried to keep the children as much as possible, but the most we sat quiet because we were hungry. And how much can you talk? But he did always a positive. always thinking positive. He used to say, no way is everybody going to be, are the Germans going to succeed. No way. Someone will survive and will have to tell the story. Maybe it's going to be us. He kept saying that over and over. No way can all of us go. No way is it going to happen. Some will survive. The world will have to hear it. He was right. The last few weeks in hiding was very bad because the bombing was tough. So she left altogether. Second year in hiding, she took Germans to live in her house. So the barn door was always open. The Germans would walk in. It was every single day was she or she or she, almost. He had a calendar every day. He says, we made it today. He wrote every day what we did and what we talked. He was an unusual, positive, spiritual, and that's what I got it from, spiritual and positive. His way of thinking was, we'll make it. Somebody has to make it. Incident every day was something else. I'll never forget once, a Jewish little boy was hiding probably between the barns or in the forest, and somebody must have caught him. And we was looking through the windows how the whole town is chasing that little Jewish boy. His hair was already long because it must have been the second year. But our mentality was, what if he comes into our barn because our barn is open? We got so scared. Tajik was there, he closed the barn. And eventually when they caught the boy, he came back and opened the barn, and we asked him what happened. The whole town chased a little Jewish boy, and they caught him and they killed him. It's difficult to understand, but every time I talk about it, I live it. I talk sometimes twice a day. It hits me. I live it through. I feel it. Every day was some other issues that we had. But what I do remember is how my father acted. Once, Passover, we didn't have bread for weeks. Comes Passover, she brings bread. Naturally. So my mom, she says, I don't eat, I won't need it. My mom says, we finally have a piece of bread, you're not going to eat it? He says, no, I made it, I will make it. If I'm meant to make it, I will make it. He's not eating it. So my mom's begging her, bring me, he won't eat potatoes. So what do you mean he won't eat potatoes? He won't eat bread. I finally got you bread, he didn't have, he won't eat. She didn't tell him why, Moshe won't eat. She was such, I'm trying to tell you the details, the quality of this person that hid us. She goes out and looks for potatoes. Now potatoes, if they're soft and yellowish, the Ukrainians make vodka out of it. But she found these potatoes, and she peeled them, cooked them, and brought us up. We ate them, and we all got sick. We all got drunk. That was the only time we were sick in the 2 years. Only time sick. No coughing, no sneezing. We couldn't cough. We couldn't sneeze. We couldn't laugh. We learned to sneeze, not to talk. We learned to survive. One time we were hungry, always hungry, and we didn't blame her. Not only didn't she have how to buy, but how can you feed 9 people? Food wasn't easy. So one time she brings us up a round bread, probably no more than 2 pounds, a round circle, I'll never forget it. And all of us are staring at it. We were two families. My mom's sister with her husband, and we were 4, and they were 4. My grandmother was the 5th one, so we're 9 people. My father was the leader, yes, but my uncle was a tough guy. I don't want to discuss the issues, but we lived together. But my father was in charge, so he takes the bread, cuts it exactly half, and gives it to my uncle, because he's there 4 people. But my father takes from his half the first slice, and he gives my grandma. I remember that. This is the values that I learned. Then he takes this second, gives my mom, gives me my sister, one for him. My mom gives me her half. He takes his half and gives to his sister, to my sister. This I never forgot. Whatever my father and mother would do wrong for me, whatever complaints I ever had, I always said to myself, they gave me their half a slice of bread. Anyway, the last few weeks it was tough because the bombing was terrible. She wasn't there. We had nothing to eat. So my parents would go out at night into the garden, whatever they found, a cucumber, a radish, whatever, and that's what we ate the last few weeks. Again, my father was afraid that if we lose the roof, they will see us. The goyim, the neighbors, or the Germans that live in the house. So he said, let's dig out in the barn, in the bottom of the barn. As you walk into the barn, it's not from concrete, it's from earth. So we had 2 pails for waste. So we had 2 pails. So with our hands, we dug out, put earth in the pails and put them on the attic. And we had dug out enough of a hole for the 4 adults to sit and the children on their knees, and a little air to outside. In case we lose the roof, we have where to hide. He always thought in advance. Sure enough, that's where we were when the Russians walked in and we heard Russian in Ukraine. 1944 of June, the Russians walked into Kharkiv, and when my father called out to look if it's the Russians, not the Ukrainians, it was them, and we smelled food. And we came out, and none of us could walk. We looked like skeletons. And you know what? We didn't cry, we didn't laugh, we didn't hug. We just looked at each other. Is it possible? And the Russians looked at us. Yes, you're alive, you're here. It's okay, we're here. So we wanted food, and they said, don't eat. If you eat, you'll die. You can't digest any food. They gave us a bottle of vodka, and they said, go find someone to nourish you. My father knocked on some people that he knew. My aunt went a different place. The woman was shocked to see us alive, but she didn't kill us, which is lucky. She took us in, gave us a bath, after 2 years a bath, and then she put us on clean sheets and nursed us to food every morning, a spoon. It didn't take long, I don't know exact 2 weeks, 1 week approximately, but we were all very anxious to go out to see who else survived. 31 people survived, all in hiding by non-Jews. No one came back from that train that they said they're going to take to Lvov. My father was right. They lied. They took these Jews remaining, put them on the train, took them outside of the city, Kharkiv, and shot them all. My father was right. He did not believe them. This is what I always try to teach my kids. Not to believe everything you hear, and to know, to read the paper, to understand, to understand, not just to read and believe. You've got to be intelligent to be able to add dots, what's going on. We stayed in Kharkiv till 1945, when the war ended in 1945. Just like my father said, Jews are going to come looking for survivors. We were ready to leave. They were looking for survivors, picked us up. This is a whole new story to tell how we got out. We came to the American zone. They tried to bring all the survivors to the DP camps in the American zone. We should be together. It was the right thing to do. I wound up in Austria, in Ebelsberg. We lived in army barracks, which means the toilet in one corner, and the kitchen in the other. We had one room for the 5 of us. My grandma came with us. The Jewish agencies, the Joint or the Hayas, was right there to help us with food. We had right away teachers, not teachers even, whoever was able to teach the children. Because there were children from all over, from every town and city. We need to teach the children. The main thing, education, education, education. Teach the children. We had right-away teachers, make schools, and not only teaching the kids to learn, but for the older children to learn a trade. My husband learned watchmaker. My sister was older. I was 11 by then, but she was 16. So she went to learn to be something when we come to the United States. She should have a trade to make a living. But at the time, we did not know where we're going. Everybody wanted to go to Palestine, but it was not, no way could you get to Palestine 45, 46, 47 with children. They only wanted young people, so we waited. But let me tell you, the DP camps, they were the best years of my life. That's all I can tell you. I had freedom. I could walk, I could talk. I learned to ride a bike. I learned to talk loud. I learned to laugh, to sing, to sneeze. I'm still today forget that I can sneeze whenever I feel like it. And we had friends, and we went hiking, and we had school, we had outing. Who cared about where I lived and where I stayed? Who cared what I had? We had food enough. My father right away provided food. Remember I told you my father had saved sacks of material? These are the sack, when the woman, Stephanie, didn't have money, she would say, I have no money to buy food. He would give her a piece of material. And when we were liberated, he still had material to have food. We still had material to sell and to have a piece of gold when he crossed the borders. That was my father. He knew what he was doing. And I always learned from him a lot. 1949, the doors opened to go everywhere. We wanted to go to Israel. My aunt and uncle talked my parents out of it. They're so tough, they can't help. Whatever the reasons, we decided to go to the United States. There again, my father said, I'm not going north where everybody's going. I'm going south. All my friends are going north. I mean, this is our friends. This is the friends that I still keep. No, we're going south. We're going, where we're going? To New Orleans. New Orleans. Okay, he picked me. The Jewish age says, where do you want to go? He showed him the south. They're right there in New Orleans. He said, okay, New Orleans we go. We came to America with General Black. It's an army boat. But I tell you, 2 weeks was rough, but when we came on the Mississippi to go down the river, oh, it was really emotional. City, the stars, the people, the lights, slowly, slowly, we finally felt we're coming to a place where we can start life. That's where we're going to start our life. And then we get off the boat, this Jewish woman, Jewish agencies again, Mrs. Bronick, speaks Yiddish, because none of us spoke English, picks us up. And we came just September, just a week before Rosh Hashanah. So she takes us, gives us a ride over the beautiful city. And I say to my father, why the hell did you stay in this forsaken small little town? Couldn't you have emigrated here earlier? He says, why aren't you grateful that you're here now? That's right. It's always right, my father. Always the right word. She showed us the city. So my father says to her, I need a kosher meal and I need an Orthodox synagogue. She says, it's not a problem. So she found us a house, that they had a kosher house, and the synagogue was within walking distance, so we stayed with them for Yom Tov. But that experience was also horrible. These people, what did they know from anything? They had a good life. So Mrs. Bonning makes sure that we dressed nice. She took us to the Jewish merchants, and she dresses the children. We need new clothing, we need new shoes. And we come to this house for Yom Tov, and we sit at this beautiful table, beautiful serving, food. I've never even dreamed of having such food. And we sit down, so the man said, I don't remember the people's name. We looked like, what can I tell you? It felt like, it looked like, I don't want to say. But the man says to my father, would you like to say something? Would you like to say something in Yiddishkeit to this? So my father looks and says, what I have now is, you don't want to hear. But I can talk now. I'm grateful that I'm sitting at your table. Thank you for having us. And that's all he wanted to say. The man turns around and says to him, you know what? Forget everything. Go forward. The Jews did not want to hear. That's why Jews didn't talk. American Jews did not want to hear. Ever since then, Jews kept quiet. He said very well. So my father didn't answer him, but when we came home, he said, we will go forward, but we will not forget. He says, we will go forward. We will make it, but we'll not forget. And we did make it. Thank God we made it. I can't ask for more than I have. The same Bronick, he needs a job. He has no language because the agency will they'll get us an apartment, a 2-room apartment, and close to the shul that he wanted, the Orthodox shul. But after 3 months, you're on your own, so we have to work. I have to go to school, I'm young. My sister has to get to work. My mom couldn't go to work. So she takes him to this Jewish agent, merchants, and his feed is material. And she says to them, when the guy she went to was Gelman, I remember him, you have to hire him. So he says, okay, if I have to, I have to. So he says to my father, you come Shabbos morning to work. My father says, I don't work Shabbos. You don't work Shabbos in New Orleans? New Orleans, very, very few Jews do no work Shabbos. He says, I don't work Shabbos and I eat kosher. Finish conversation. So she says to the man, Mrs. Bornick says, you have to hire him. You just have to do it. That's it. He says, if I have to, he says, would you come Sunday to work? My father, sure. As early as you want, I'll come Sunday. So I want to tell you this particular, because I'm so enthused, I'm all of the way we did it. So he comes Sunday to work, and the store is a mess. And he knew his merchandise. He was a great, great salesman. He puts everything in order, and a customer comes in, a woman comes in, and looks at the merchandise, so he follows her. The man stays in the front register because Sunday he's not busy. The woman sees that he's not talking, so she's showing what she wants with the eyes, and he's looking and he's measuring, he's showing her you want from here to here. He was a great salesman, knew how to sell. The reason I know these details because he came home and told it to us. And at the end of an hour, whatever how long it took her, she decides on a piece of material, and he cuts it, and he knew American centimeters, and he knew European. He just knew it. He was very good in math. Cuts it, figures it out, gives her a receipt, she goes to pay. At the end, my father puts the store in order. At the end of the day, Mr. Gelman says to my father, you earned your own job. What more did he want? Comes home, he says, I earned my job. She didn't give it to me. That means he worked for this man for a year, and after a year, the man says to him, you know, Moshe, you have 2 teenage daughters, you're not going to make, you know what he made? $25 a week. He says to him, you have 2 teenage daughters, you're not going to make a living in my store. Come, let me show you how to peddle. That's why my father went to the South. He remembered that the Russian immigrants, when they came to the United States in the early 1900s, when there were pogroms in Russia, they came to the South, they were peddlers, and then they became, all the department stores were Jewish. So he says, this is what I'm going to be, a peddler. And this man helped him to become a peddler, and he became a peddler, and he loved it. And the customers loved him. My parents lived in New Orleans for many, many years. My sister and I got married and moved to New York. She got married to her sweetheart from Europe that she met a survivor that came out of the woods from our hometown. So I want to just talk about religion here for 1 minute, since you are a crowd that understands what it is. All the Jews were Orthodox in Europe. I don't remember anybody, maybe most of them. So my brother-in-law, they lived in outside of the city. They were like farmers. They had a big family, maybe 6, 7 kids. When the Germans came in, they slaughtered the whole family. But my brother-in-law was a little boy, maybe 15, or no younger than 15, I would say 13. When they opened the door to get into the house to take the family, the door covered him up, and that's how he stayed alive. So he ran to the forest, seen a few other, maybe 12 other from the villages, went to the forest, and he made it. When the war ended, he did not want to know anything about religion. When we lived, all of us 31 lived together, he was part of the 31. When my mother used to bench Schlecht Friday night, he would come by and close the light. Everybody left him alone. He had an uncle in the United States that brought him over. He had 2 uncles. They brought him over right because he was a teenager. In 1947, he came to the United States, and they were Orthodox people. So by the time we came to New York, to the United States in 49, he was here 2 years with the uncles, and they turned him back to religion. And he became more religious than my father. That's the point I wanted to make. To me, that's important. My father wouldn't let him marry her. No way, and he knew that. So when he came to the United States, he knew and the uncles made a good job on him. Okay, so that's one example. So we both married, and she has one son, Nathan, lives in Muncie. I married to Brighton, Manhattan Beach. That's where since I'm married. I have 2 children, son and a daughter, both highly educated, professionals. I have 4 grandchildren, 3 grandchildren from my daughter, which are older, also very educated, all Jewish. At the end, I have a little granddaughter, 2-year-old, which is the joy of my life. What can I say? My son got married late. When I was a caregiver for my parents, because they died in 93, 94. My sister died young at 64. I took care of all of them. Then my husband got Parkinson's and cancer. I was a caregiver, but working all along. When he passed away, I realized I'm still working, that I need something to do in my spare time. I don't want to sit home and clean house. So I found the museum, volunteered, and they gave me the courage to talk. That's why I'm talking, because the museum gave me the chance to learn and to express and to tell. And I speak to children, every school, high school, mostly non-Jewish, mostly, which is, I think, and the questions that they ask sometimes are hard to answer, but I'll give you 2 examples and I'll stop, okay? One example, the other day, was mostly immigrants, and they can't talk, but I try to get out from them conversations, and one comes over and gives me a hug and says, "Tell me, how did you make it? How is it possible?" He didn't mean so much the war as he meant as an immigrant here. I said, not easy, but if you don't have hate, like my father taught me, not to have hate, but to remember, if you go forward and you study, and you study, and you go forward, you can make it. He says, "You mean to tell me I have a chance to make it?" Goes, "Yes, by hoping and succeeding." So, okay, I'll make it. Well, that's the way to go. That's an example that you give kids. That's what my father did for us. One more example, talking to high school kids, this girl says to me, "Tell me, did you ever want revenge?" I says, "I had my revenge. I'm here. I have Jewish children and grandchildren and a great-grandson. What more can I ask for?" 2 weeks later, I get a letter from her telling me, I'm so grateful that you told me that revenge, you don't need to kill to have revenge. I taught her a lesson that you don't have to have revenge to kill, but you can remember. What the Rabbi said that we must remember, I agree. We just finished Passover, and why do we know so much Passover? Because we have repeated it 3,330 years doing it. 3,000. So, this is what I feel we have to do with the Holocaust. This was our first freedom. So Holocaust was our second freedom. Most survivors made it only by wanting to survive and succeed. Their resilience was unreal. All the survivors' children made it. Now we have to make sure that they remember. And this is what I try to do. Tell the survivors, second and third generation, they have to be the one to carry the torch. You have to meet and remember every year, because this is our second time that we were free. We had freedom, and this time we have an Israel. We don't need anything to get there. No visas. We can just go. Thank you. I maybe gave you too much, but I wanted to stop to, if you want to ask questions, please. If not, then I'm going to ask you, what did you get out of it? I don't want to just talk, I want you young people. Yes?
First of all, thank you very much for sharing your experience with us. My question is, did you ever struggle with your faith?
No.
Why?
Because my parents are women. I had the same question yesterday from a young person. Why did your father so strongly? Because he had this firm, he said it's not God's fault, it's humanity's fault. He said it's not God's fault. People decide what God gave people choices. That's exactly what he used to say. God gave people choices. These were the choices. The neighbors could have saved more. The neighbors could have been, but they didn't choose to. He just had a firm belief. So I didn't have a struggle. My husband had a struggle. My brother-in-law had a struggle. He came around. My husband came around, not fully, but enough for me to keep the home that I was used to. He had a struggle. He had 3 brothers survived. They had a struggle. But the majority that I know, and I live in a community, Jewish, trust me, came back. Even if they didn't come back completely, they made sure their kids went to yeshiva. Even if they had to go to work, they made sure that their kids went to yeshiva. My kids went to yeshiva in Flatbush, 12 years. I made sure that they know. Even if they didn't fully, but 90% I would say came back. I think so. Maybe not fully. But still, if you teach your children, then okay, I can't do it myself, but I want my kids to follow. Did I give you a little bit of an answer? A little bit. I want to add one more thing. I don't want you to forget. My parents always corresponded with Stephanie and the family. Always. We didn't have anything to give when we had nothing. But the minute we had money in New Orleans, we asked her, what do you want? She said, material, because that's what you need there. When my parents passed away and my sister, I took over. But I couldn't correspond because I don't speak Russian, I only speak Polish and they don't speak Polish. So my cousins from Israel went to Chodorov to make connections. I found, because Tajik died young, I knew that. She died, I had a picture of her and Tajik. So I looked for the next generation. I looked for her granddaughter, great-granddaughter. We found her. I'm corresponding with her. She is my biggest charity. That's where I send my most money. I don't ask her if she needs. Every 2-3 months, It's expensive to send money. It's $200. Cost me $40 to send for 200 because it's wiring. Because that's the only way she wants it. She gets it right away. But this is what I will do. But she promised me that she will tell her children what her great-grandmother did during the Second World War. We didn't forget. And I have her on Yad Vashem, her in Tajik. Next question. Otherwise, I'll ask you what you got out of it. Either you ask or I will. Anybody? Go ahead.
Yes, I read an account of a person I know. He said he's also a survivor. Went through concentration camps. His father was the camp, not doctor, but he was the one working under the Nazi doctor. And he said that in his opinion, the atmosphere in America is like Germany in the 1930s. And I wonder if you could give...
I don't agree. No, I am scared. I am scared. I am scared. Anti-Semitism is rampant all over. It's not the same. Not the same at all. First of all, we have Israel. Second of all, we do have a very strong, powerful Jewish here that are in big positions. I am scared. They should do more. We're not doing enough, but I'm not. I don't think so. He's really frightened.
He is.
He's frightened. No, I don't think so.
He's a very prominent architect.
That's okay. That's okay. But I am scared.
Yeah.
But I don't. It's no comparison. No. Because first of all, we have Israel. Hey, we have Israel. I don't need a visa to go there. So anytime you feel you can get out of here and go, not a problem. No. Anyone else? What did you get out, young or old? What did you feel when you hear? Oh, I can't see you, so speak.
I'm laying behind the screen here.
So speak.
Did you, when back then, did you know what was going on in the concentration camp?
Did I know? No. No, we didn't know what's going on in concentration camps. No. We knew that they're killing everybody, but the way it was done, no. No. Because I was not in concentration camps, and not in labor camps. I only saw once a child being shot, and I never forgot that picture. No, we didn't. We found out after. We knew that the killing is going on, but we didn't know the method.
Did you ever go back to your hometown?
I just told you I did, yes. Only I did, not my parents. I myself with my cousins from Israel, because my other cousin, we went back. It's all this, there's not a sign of Judaism. Even the cemetery, nothing. It's all, they never rebuild it. Levov is rebuilt beautifully, but not Chodor. They deserve it. They deserve it, whatever they have. Anyone? Go ahead.
How did you feel about it besides being terrified? How did you feel?
How did I feel about what?
The whole thing, besides being terrified?
How did I feel about it? At the time, my age, I didn't think. I only relied on my parents. And what I felt is they are in charge of me, and I couldn't ask anything from them more. They did the best what they could. So I had no feelings. The feelings came later when we were liberated. The thinking came later, the talking came later. Good question. How do you feel what you hear, what I say?
It's hard, it's hard to describe.
It's hard to describe. It's hard to connect. I agree with you. Anyone? Anybody else on their mind? Nothing on you. So that means I did a good job.
When you said that you didn't know anything about the camps or what was going on in those camps, did the people in your town know what was going on? I mean, the town was on a little farther away. Did
We were too
the
far.
locals know?
Didn't know. Because first of all, they were killed right away. It took a year, less than a year.
I don't mean the Jews. I mean,
The Poles,
yeah.
the Poles were collaborators. The Poles collaborated with the Germans. The Germans could never have done the jobs such a thorough job unless they collaborated.
I understand they want to get rid of the Jews, but they know about the camps? Do they understand what's happening there, other than the Jews are just being taken out of town and killed?
The camps were there, they had to know it. I didn't know because I was in hiding. They had to know the camps were in Poland. We didn't know because we went into hiding. And the ones that were picked up to go, the Lvov people might have known because the ghetto stayed longer. But we didn't know because we went in hiding. We knew that they're killing, but we didn't know the depth of it, how. Later on we found out. Anybody else? Yes.
How did you pass, when you were in hiding, especially in the barn, how did you pass the minutes and hours? Were there certain things that you occupied yourself with? Or?
My father tried to teach us, to tell us. He taught me multiplication table, very important. And the alphabet. My grandma would tell a story. But when you're hungry, you can't concentrate. That is a big, but they tried. But we kept, the four of us, we had, so Tajik, panels are very made tight together, but light comes in. What Tajik did is cut out inside one panel, so us kids can see the out. I used to watch the outside world. I used to love to watch the kids play. He never even asked my father, why can't I go out? Because I knew he can't give me the answer. But I did ask him, what's wrong with us that we have to hide? He says, I don't have an answer for you. Maybe if we make it, and you grow up, and you study, maybe you'll figure it out. Well, I've made it, and I grew up, and I'm older, and I still don't know why. I can't figure out why. I can't figure out the hatred of the Jews. I just can't figure it out.
My mother's from Lutsk. The neighborhood, I
Yes,
guess.
yes.
She always had a very bad feelings about the Polish. She said they tried to kill us before
Of
the
course,
Germans
they
got
did.
there.
I happen to have one that saved me. 31 Jews were saved by Poles. 3 families, one family was 16 people. There were quite a few Poles hit, not just by us, but compared how many, 300,000 Jews lived in Poland. Poland had the majority of Jews. Yeah, I agree, they were collaborators. That new law that Poland is making now, when I read that law, I was furious. I answered to the Times a letter, but I entered to the wrong, I put the letter to the editor. I should have wrote it to the editor. How dare you say that? I'm a witness that they collaborated. But okay, it wasn't published. I was disappointed. I was so furious when I read it. Anyone?
Do you have any tips on continuing genocide education programs in schools?
Only by teaching and paying attention. Pay attention what the leaders tell you. That's what my father said. You have to pay attention. Listen to the leadership. Now, I don't want to get into politics. I'm very careful to get into politics. I'm not allowed to. But pay attention what each candidate tells you. Now, certain people I wouldn't vote for because I go according what they talk about Israel. That's how I vote. I had a big argument yesterday with that young rabbi that I went to. I'm trying to convert him. That's very, you pick candidates that you know what they stand for, but you have to understand. I never voted for Obama. This I have to say. Why? Everybody in my neighborhood, not mine. I must say my group not. But what do you mean? Look how he speaks. He loves the Jews. Yes? Only one reason gave me. Let me give you an example. He sat 20 years with the, what was his name?
Reverend Wright.
Right. Who talked hate of the Jews and hate the United States. You know what I used to say to people who talked about politics? Would you sit in a synagogue if your rabbi stand in front of you and talked against the Gentiles? I said, I wouldn't. If he said 20 years, He must hate those Jews desperately when he showed you when he was in office who he was. I said, I told you so. Too late? Okay, too late. That's what young people have to learn. To read, to understand. Unfortunately, even I didn't make a good job of that. And trust me, I tried. My son understands me well. My daughter, no. Her kids, no, they're born here, they have you know what I say, you have a silver spoon in your mouth. And you don't appreciate it. I appreciate everything that I have. And if I don't have it, I don't need it. That's what my father taught me.
Did you miss a connection with other people from Europe in the South, or were there other people who came as well to the North?
The South, New Orleans had a few survivors, but not young people. So my parents had their own little niche there. Not much, a
I
few.
could sense so much when you were sitting at the table, you described it so perfectly,
What?
in terms of feeling how
No, but
different you were.
we didn't socialize with them,
Yeah.
trust. There was no socialization with them. It wasn't easy. But I'm very fortunate that when I came to New York, I worked in an office, I'm able to socialize with Americans. But my friends are the survivors, all children survivors, like me. Okay?
One more question.
Yes.
You spoke so beautifully about your father. I just wondered, does your appearance favor your father? You look like your father.
I'm not sure, I think I look more like my mother. My mother was strong too.
Okay.
They worked very well together, very well. He didn't talk much, but she knew what they worked very well together. They worked together all their life. They were both strong people.
I didn't mean
my
that,
sister,
whatever, but...
my sister looks like my mother more. My father, I think, because I looked lately at old pictures. I found some pictures, and I think I look like I think. Everybody says I look like my mother. People that lived, my parents' family came to live in my neighborhood because I had to take care of them, and that when they knew my parents, everybody was in awe with my father and mother. All my friends, they never met anybody like them. They were just very unusual, good value, and smart people.
One more question.
So okay.
We have one more question.
One more, okay.
What should we say to people nowadays that don't believe in the Holocaust?
What should I say?
Someone said about the Holocaust, and he was fine.
I'm not as
Deniers, people that deny
Oh,
the Holocaust,
that's-
what to say to them?
That's what to say to them, that they have to be educated. There's always going to be a denial. This is going to happen because this is it. That's why I speak in schools and I ask everybody to be my witness, you too. So if I speak to hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of kids, so all of them will be my witness. So what's the witness? So I say to them, I'm going to be gone. If you find a denier or one that reads a book, or you can answer and say you met Toby, and it's a truth. So the only way is education. But even education depends on the home. If the hatred is at home, if hatred is there, then it's not going to work.
Could we end with one question?
Sure.
End with this question?
Do you feel guilty almost for surviving?
No. No, because my father said somebody has to make it to tell the world. God shows up. He didn't say God, he just we are chosen. Because we made it. No, I don't feel guilty. You're right, that some feel guilty. I have friends that feel guilty. And they ask, why me? So I tell them, somebody had to be, and it's you. So why don't you appreciate that it's you? And you do the right thing, live the right life. That will be why I feel guilty. Do the right thing now. Be guilty will give you what? Did I answer you well?
Mm-hmm.
No. Life is there.
Thank you so much.
it's worth it. Anyway, you just learn to read 2 papers, not 1, before you go voting.
On behalf of our community, thank you so much for sharing your story with us. We will remember it forever.
Don't watch just CNN, watch.
If we let you keep talking, will you give us the politics? Because I think everyone here would stay. You're not allowed. It's a pulpit. You can say whatever you want.
If that's the case, watch 2 stations. Watch Fox and watch CNN. Then you learn, and then you decide what's the truth and what's not.
Beautiful. There'll be a Marav Minyan at 9:30 for both Democrats and Republicans in the base medrash. You're welcome to join us. Thank you so much for coming to the program.